Snow was still coming down when my father stood up at the dinner table, tapped his fork against his wine glass, and said, with the same casual confidence he uses to order coffee, that starting this year I would be covering my brother's rent. Not asking, announcing. He smiled at the room like he'd just shared good news. My aunt nodded. My uncle reached for the bread basket. My mother added, without looking up from her plate, that it was only temporary, and that I had the means. My brother sat 2 chairs down from me, staring at the tablecloth, and said nothing. I'm 32 years old. My name is Leigh. I work in healthcare administration in Ottawa, and I have spent the last 6 years being the person my family calls when things fall apart. That night was supposed to be Christmas dinner. I set my fork down very slowly. I looked at my father. I said, actually, no. The table went quiet in that particular way that only happens when someone does something the family has silently agreed will never happen. My mother exhaled through her nose. My father's smile dropped just slightly, the way it does when he's recalibrating. My brother finally looked up. I said it again, quieter. No. And then I picked up my wine glass, took 1 sip, and put my napkin on the table beside my plate. They thought I was bluffing. I wasn't, and the next 6 weeks would prove that to all of us. I need to explain something about my brother Cade because none of this makes sense without it. Cade is 28. He's smart, genuinely, frustratingly smart, the kind of person who can walk into any room and charm every single person in it within 10 minutes. He got accepted to 3 universities and attended none of them for longer than a semester. He's had maybe 11 jobs in the last 4 years. Not because he gets fired, usually, but because he gets bored, or overwhelmed, or something better comes along, or the job isn't what he thought it would be. Every time something falls apart for Cade, there's a family meeting, and at every family meeting, the conclusion is the same. We help him. We pool resources. We give him another runway. The first time I was pulled into it, I was 26 and had just started my job. My parents asked me to cover 2 months of Cade's rent while he figured out his next move. $800 a month, so $1,600 total. I said yes because I was new to having money and didn't know how to say no to my parents yet, and because I genuinely thought it was one time. It was not one time. Over the following 5 years, I paid for 6 months of Cade's rent across different apartments in 2 cities, half of a business incorporation fee for a landscaping company he ran for 4 months, his car insurance for nearly a year after he forgot to pay it and got dropped, a lawyer's retainer when he had a dispute with a former business partner, and the one that still makes my stomach turn. I co-signed on a personal line of credit for him at the request of my father, who told me it was just a formality and that Cade would never actually draw on it. He drew on it. $12,000 over 8 months, which I only found out about when the bank sent a statement to my address, because I was the co-signer. I didn't say anything. I paid the minimum to protect my own credit and added it to the running tally I kept in a notes app on my phone. I don't know why I kept that tally. Maybe I already knew, somewhere deep down, that I was going to need it one day. By Christmas of that year, the total was somewhere north of $34,000. Most of it gone. None of it repaid. My parents are not bad people. I want to be clear about that because it would be easier if they were. They're the kind of parents who came to every school event, who called every Sunday, who sent care packages when I moved out and cried at both my graduations. They love Cade. They love me. They love us in the specific way that some parents love their children, completely, fiercely, and with a total blind spot for the ways that love becomes a burden, carried by whoever is most able to carry it. I was always the capable one. I got the grades. I kept the job. I didn't need them, so they stopped asking if I was okay and started assuming I was fine. And because I was fine, I became the solution to the problems of everyone who wasn't. My mother once said to me, during a particularly hard stretch for Cade, that I should be grateful I had the ability to help. That not everyone has that. She meant it kindly. She truly did. But something about the framing. that my stability was something I owed them access to, never quite left me. I let it go that time. I let it go a lot of times. Christmas dinner was the last time. The week after Christmas, my mother called. She did the thing she does where she opens with small talk for approximately 90 seconds and then pivots to the real reason she called, as though the preamble will soften the landing. She asked how work was. She mentioned the weather. Then she said, "I hope you've had a chance to think about what your father said." I was standing in my kitchen in my work clothes, still in my coat. I'd just gotten home. I remember this clearly because I was so tired, not just physically tired, but tired in that specific bone-deep way that only comes from carrying something for too long. I told her I had thought about it. She asked what I'd decided. I said I hadn't decided anything because this wasn't my decision to make. Kate is an adult. Kate's rent is Kate's responsibility. And I was not going to be co-opted into another financial arrangement I hadn't agreed to. My mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that landed heavier than she intended. She said, "Leigh, you make good money. You'll be fine. He might not be." She said it the way you'd say, "pass the salt." Completely matter of fact. Like the calculus was obvious, and the only reasonable response was to accept it. I stayed very still. I said, "I hear you." And then I said I had to go, and I hung up. I sat down on my kitchen floor, still in my coat, and I just breathed for a minute. That sentence, "You'll be fine. He might not be." That was the whole architecture of the last 6 years, condensed into 11 words. My stability wasn't something to protect. It was a resource to extract. I think that was the moment I actually understood what I was dealing with. 3 days into the new year, my father called to check in. He has a particular tone when he's checking in about something he's already decided. A kind of deliberate lightness, like he's not applying pressure, he's just curious. He asked if I'd had a chance to talk to my mother. I said yes. He asked what I was thinking. I said I was thinking I wasn't going to do it. The lightness evaporated. He asked me why I was making this so difficult. He reminded me of everything they'd done for me. He said Cade was going through a hard time and that family is supposed to show up for each other. He used the phrase, "blood is thicker than water," twice. I asked him when Cade was going to start showing up. Silence. I said it carefully. I said, "I've been showing up for 6 years financially and practically and without being asked." I said I wanted to know when Cade's obligation to show up would kick in, when he would start carrying some portion of his own weight, when the expectation of support would move in his direction rather than exclusively in mine. My father said I was being unfair. I said I agreed to disagree and I ended the call. That night I pulled up my notes app. I looked at the tally. I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank records going back 6 years. Then I called a friend of mine who works in financial law and asked her one question about cosign lines of credit. Her answer changed everything. Here's what I did not know until she explained it. When you cosign a line of credit, you are not a reference. You are not a backup. You are equally and fully liable for that debt. The lender can come after you first, before they even attempt to collect from the primary borrower. If the primary borrower defaults, your credit takes the hit. Your wages can be garnished. Your assets are at risk. I had signed that document 4 years ago in a Tim Hortons parking lot on a Sunday afternoon because my father handed it to me and said, "It's just so he can have a credit cushion. He won't need to use it." $12,000. Used. I asked my friend what my options were. She walked me through them. It wasn't simple, but it wasn't impossible either. There were steps I could take to protect myself. Formally, legally, on paper. I took all of them. I'm not going to pretend the next few weeks were easy. They weren't. I contacted the bank and requested a full statement of the line of credit, documented in my name. I met with a lawyer. One I found myself, paid for myself, and went through every document I'd signed over the years. We found 2 other things I hadn't fully understood at the time of signing. A form connected to Cade's car loan that had my name on it in a way I hadn't realized carried liability, and a lease guarantee from 4 years ago that had technically never been canceled. My lawyer helped me draft formal notifications to the relevant institutions. Some of it was simple. Some of it required negotiation. The process took about 3 weeks and cost me several $100s that I thought of as the price of finally understanding my own financial situation. I didn't tell my family any of this while it was happening. I went quiet, no return calls, no responses to texts beyond, "I'm fine, I'll talk to you soon." My mother texted every few days. My father once, "Kade," and this tells you everything, texted me once 2 weeks in to ask if I'd thought about what this was doing to Mom. Not to him, not to the family, to Mom, as though I had done something to her. I responded, "I hope you're doing well, Kade." He didn't write back. The call came on a Thursday evening in late January, my father's number. I let it ring through to voicemail, then listened. His voice was tighter than I'd heard it in years. He said there had been some issue with Cade's banking and that he needed to speak with me. He said it was urgent. He said to please call him back that night. I waited until the next morning. When I called, he picked up immediately. He asked what I had done. Not hello, not how are you, just what did you do? I told him I had reviewed my financial obligations and taken steps to manage my own liability appropriately. He said the bank had flagged the line of credit and that there were complications. I said I was sorry to hear that. He asked if I had spoken to a lawyer. I said I had. Long pause. Then he said in a quieter voice, "Leigh, this is serious. Cade could lose access to." I said gently but clearly, "That's between Cade and his bank, Dad." Another pause. He asked if we could meet, talk in person, sort this out. I said I was open to talking. I said I thought it would be a good conversation. I said I'd let him know when I had time in my schedule. Then I said goodbye and hung up. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that. The light through the window was that flat gray January light that Ottawa does for months on end. I made tea. I looked at the table. I thought about the Tim Hortons parking lot and my father's hand passing me that document and the absolute certainty in his face that I would just sign it. I had been so eager to be helpful. I had confused being needed with being loved. They came to my apartment together, my parents, on a Saturday afternoon 2 weeks later. I had not invited them. They buzzed from the lobby and I let them up because I knew we'd have to do this eventually. And I'd rather do it on my terms, in my space. My mother came in first. She was wearing her coat, and she didn't take it off, which meant she was either planning to leave quickly or bracing herself. Maybe both. My father came in behind her, quieter than usual, which is never a good sign with him. Quiet with my father means he's already decided how the conversation is going to go and is waiting to implement it. My mother looked around my apartment, then looked at me and said, "You didn't have to do all this." I asked her what she meant. She said I could have just talked to them, that this was extreme, that Cade was a mess right now, and that I was making it worse. I made them coffee. I sat down. I waited. My father started talking about family, about what it means to support each other through hard times. He said they had always been there for me, and they had, in their way, that was true, and that they expected the same from me. I asked him what the same looked like exactly. I pointed out that they had never co-signed anything for me, had never been asked to carry financial liability on my behalf, had never been publicly announced at a dinner table as responsible for my debts. He said that was different. I asked how. He didn't answer. My mother's eyes filled, which I knew would happen and which I had prepared myself for, because her tears have redirected me more than once over the years, and I had decided this time they wouldn't. I said, "I love you both. I love Cade. And I am not going to keep doing this, not because I don't care, because I do care about myself, for the first time in a long time. And because helping Cade the way we've been helping him is not actually helping him. My father said, "So that's it, you're just walking away." I said, "I'm not walking away. I'm stopping something that was hurting all of us, including him." They left about 20 minutes later. My mother hugged me at the door in a way that felt like a question. My father walked out without looking back. I closed the door and stood in my hallway for a long time. It didn't feel like winning, but it felt, for the first time in a very long time, like solid ground. It's been 4 months since Christmas dinner. My parents and I talk occasionally now, Sunday calls mostly short. Things are careful between us, the way they are when something has cracked and been taped back together. We don't discuss Cade's finances. We don't discuss mine. We talk about weather and work and my mother's garden and whether the Senators have a chance this season. From what I've gathered, Cade found a roommate, got a job at a logistics company, and is, according to my aunt, who cannot help herself, figuring it out. She said it like she expected me to feel guilty. I didn't. I felt something closer to relief. He hasn't called me. I haven't called him. I don't know if we'll get there. I genuinely hope we do. But I know now that hope is not the same as obligation. The line of credit is in the process of being restructured under his name alone. The lawyer's letters did what they needed to do. My credit is clean. My savings are mine. I went back to that notes app last week, the one with the tally. I looked at the number, 34,000 and change, and then I deleted the file. Not because I've forgotten, but because I don't need to carry it in my phone anymore. It's a strange thing to spend years being the responsible one and then realize that responsibility, in the way my family defined it, had nothing to do with me at all. It was just the shape of a container they found useful. I fit the shape. I held what they poured in. And when I stopped, they had to figure out what to do with what had always been theirs to carry. I'm still the eldest. I'm still the capable one. I still pick up the phone on Sundays. But I do it now because I want to, not because I'm afraid of what happens if I don't. That difference, small as it sounds, is everything. On New Year's Day, I made breakfast, just for me. I stood at my window with coffee and watched the street below, clean and white and quiet. And I thought about that dinner table, my father's voice, the fork against the glass. I thought about how a whole life can hinge on one moment of saying no, not dramatically, not cruelly, just clearly. Just finally. I raised my mug to no one in particular. To this year, I thought, the one that's actually mine. I keep coming back to that moment in the Tim Hortons parking lot, my father handing me the document through the car window, his absolute certainty that I would sign it, and me, taking the pen without asking a single question. I wasn't naive. I was trained. There's a difference, and it took me years to see it clearly. What happened to me and what I eventually did about it didn't come down to luck or timing. It came down to choices. Mine, and the ones my family kept making around me. For years, I chose to absorb. I chose silence over conflict, harmony over honesty, their comfort over my own financial reality. And every time I made that choice, I taught them that the cost of asking me was zero, that I would carry whatever they placed in my hands, and I would do it quietly, and I would find a way to be fine. That's not love. That's a pattern. And patterns, once you see them, are very hard to unsee. I think about Cade sometimes, not with anger anymore, mostly with something sadder. He didn't invent the situation he's in. He was handed a life where consequences were always softened before they reached him, where someone else's resources were always available, where the lesson, "You are capable of handling this yourself," was never allowed to land. That's not kindness. It looks like kindness from the outside, but it's actually a kind of harm, slow and well-intentioned and very hard to undo by the time you're 28 and haven't learned how to hold your own weight. I'm not responsible for that, but I was participating in it, and stopping was the most honest thing I ever did for him, even if he doesn't see it that way yet. What I had to build, what I wish I'd built sooner, was the intelligence to read a situation clearly, without the distortion of guilt or obligation, to look at a document before signing it, to ask what just a formality actually means in writing, to understand that love and liability are not the same thing and that someone who conflates them for you is not doing you a favor. That kind of clear-eyed thinking doesn't come naturally when you've spent your whole life being told that caring means giving without question. You have to choose it, deliberately, sometimes in the middle of a kitchen floor still wearing your coat. And then there's the matter of actually doing something once you see clearly. That part was harder than I expected. Not because the steps were complicated. They weren't once I had the right help. But because every step required me to hold steady against the pressure to undo it. My mother's voice cracking. My father's disappointment. The silence from Cade. I had to decide over and over that what I was doing was right even when it felt cruel. That is its own kind of strength. Not the loud kind, the quiet, stubborn, unsexy kind that just keeps showing up for itself, even when no one is applauding. I'm not the person who sat in that Tim Hortons parking lot anymore. I know what I'm signing. I know what I'm worth. I know that the people who love you well don't hand you their problems and call it family. That's the year I got back, the one that finally belonged to me.